Good evening. I am here to drop in with all of you for this special Late Night Talkin' Tarot series where we are channeling Marilyn Monroe and also, of course, Norma Jean Baker, who is the woman behind the celebrity identity. And we are tapping into her life. We covered in episode one sort of a general background of um, Marilyn's history, um, the circumstances that brought her to the point of becoming this starlet, at the top of her game, who continues to be this icon that is remembered um, even among new generations, are discovering her. You got Generation Z discovering her too. I just have a feeling that she's a star that burns so bright. She's just going to go on and on and on. She's never going to die out. She's never going to die out. She's faster than the speed of light. She's never going to die out. And there's just this need really to create like a picture of what she rose up out of, because I actually think that she's really a story of inspiration. She didn't have an easy life. She did not have an easy life. And yet, the way that she moved through her experiences and the way that she was able to find joy and maintain hope and hold on to her good, loving heart really is a testimony of the human spirit. And so I wanted to give a little background, and we did that in episode one. We didn't really get too heavy into the details of her passing, which is highly controversial. And there is also its fair share of conspiracy theory involved. I will also say that there has been a lot of evidence that has come forward that has also been suppressed. And there are many matters that have been concealed in this case of her death because there are compromises to national security. And we're going to delve into this in this particular episode. And we're going to do something a little different. I have my angel and occult decks combined here. The occult deck representing the shadow and the angel deck representing the light. And we're going to use this as sort of an esoteric lie detector. And what I'm going to do this episode with all of you is we're going to dive into the specific details of that night. And we're going to go through them one by one. All right. And you, as the listener, are going to form your own opinion about what you thought happened that night. Now, the official statement is that it remains as so, that it was a probable suicide. But there have been many things that have come to light, and there have been many official people that have stepped forward and gone on the record. So we are going to dive into all of that. I can tell you already. And then I already feel stuff coming in around my throat chakra. And I think that's really relating to the suppression that has been around the truth getting out concerning her passing. But we are going to explore this anyway. And let's just go right into it, okay? If you want to get an update on where we're at in this story, it is a series. So you can check out episode one that's up. And I'm also going to go into the Red Diary, why I chose to name this Red Diary and how this all ties in. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is the last person that was known to have communication with Marilyn before her death. And that is her friend, Jose Bolaños. Now, Jose Bolaños was on the phone with Marilyn the night that she died. And he was talking to her and having a deep conversation with her. He later went on record to say that that night, while he was talking to Monroe, she revealed to him that that man, which is a little nickname she had for John Kennedy, that man had told her, and I actually wrote down the official quote of what he said, told me something shocking, something that one day will rock the world. Okay. There's a lot of speculation around what that something shocking was. We're not going to get into that right now. We're just going into the facts of that night. Okay. There's a lot of conspiracy theory around it, and it's pretty wild and it's pretty out there. And I never expected that doing this channeling session with Marilyn would take me down that kind of a rabbit hole, but it's pretty wild. Jose said that after this admission came through from Marilyn, that there was some knock at her door. Okay. And she told him to hold on a moment, and she left him on the line. She never got back on the phone after that. The next thing that he heard was just the receiver being put down. Okay. And that was it. That was it. He didn't hear any commotion. He didn't hear anything on his end at all whatsoever. He just heard that the receiver got put down. And there's not really a lot of detail about how he felt about that. But why don't we just go ahead and just pull a card on this right now and just see if we can get any information about the nature of this conversation, what came through, is it true? And what are some clues we can get about this last communication that Marilyn had with Jose Bolaños and what she told him? We're looking for any statements that can provide us with clarity about this. I just heard from Marilyn, he's as true as a man is true. That's kind of an interesting statement. He's true as a man is true. Well, you know, this is interesting. Yeah, this is interesting. She was saying that, you know, sometimes you gotta save your neck in a way. Maybe he knows a little too much. Maybe he knows a little too much, and so there's a need for discretion. I'm getting that pretty strongly. These cards are sure taking a long time to answer anything. Can we get, whoop, there it came. Okay, let's have a look at this. 2 cards, both coming up in the light. So that's a confirmation that what he was saying was true. We have Uriel, which is the Tower. Wow. Whew, chills. And it says here, the print is very small. Oh, there we go. Disruption, warns of disasters, aids in transformation, the fire of God. Okay, so when we're looking at the Tower, we're looking at revelations, right? Mind-blowing, mind-expansive experiences, things that really shock us and change the way we look at the world, change the way we look at situations. So I think this is a confirmation that what was revealed to Marilyn was something that is like a collective tower. I'm getting that it hasn't hit yet. This is what's coming in. It hasn't hit yet. This is something that this generation will be aware of, though. This generation, the Generation Z, will definitely see this come to pass in their lifetime. Okay, that's interesting information to come through right there. But this is, this is something that rocks the collective consciousness, much like he was said with this tower, it causes disruption. This is really tying in actually to a conspiracy theory, and I don't want to dive into that right now, but I'll just put that little feather in my cap, and I'll make a mental note to refer back to this moment in this read when we go into episode 3. Okay, episode 3 is going to be like the conspiracy theory read. All right, we're going to really go out there on that one. I think I'll actually pull out the arcane bullshit deck on that one, because it's perfect. It's perfect for working with what's going to be coming in there. But this ties into that. All right. So I think he was telling the truth. Absolutely. We've got 6 of Wands. This is definitely a yes, a confirmation. His statement was truthful. So we know that Jose Bolaños, according to our spiritual our spiritual jury, is basically saying, yes, this man was telling the truth. Something shocking was revealed to Marilyn by John, and that she alluded to it. She alluded to it, what it was. I'm going to say that. She alluded to it, to Jose Bolaños. And here with this 6 of Wands, Sahia, God who took evil. Longevity protects against infirmities. Yeah. Okay. So we also know that Jose Bolaños is covered. Okay. He's covered. And he's in alignment. He's in alignment with spirit on this one. So we can take this as a firm yes on this fact. Okay. The next piece that we have to look at is Eunice Murray. Now, Eunice Murray was the housekeeper. And instantly, when I started working with Marilyn, I really had this, how do I put this? How would I put this, Marilyn? Marilyn says that the connection was like a pleasant facade. She didn't quite trust Eunice. I got this very strongly with Marilyn. And in the first episode we did, it came through that Marilyn was highly intuitive. She did have a grand water trine in her natal chart. So she was very intuitive. She was very sensitive. She was very perceptive of other people, how they looked at things. She could hear their thoughts. She could read the room. She was very sensitive to energy, sentient. She was a sentient. She did not trust Eunice. I kept getting this sense very strongly. Now, Eunice was actually referred to Marilyn by her psychologist, Greenson. And, the relationship between patient and psychologist was quite compromised, actually, and not appropriate. There were times when Marilyn was invited to have dinner with him and his family. There were things that blurred the lines between appropriate conduct for a psychologist to have a patient. It really is giving me vibes big time of the experience with Michael Jackson. And, if you look at the parallels with that, there are actually a lot of parallels there. There is this piece of, she was heavily medicated. She had access to all these barbiturates, and who was providing that to her. So there's this piece there that you have to look at. And I'm getting this like sickening feeling as I'm talking about that. So I definitely feel that, he was hand selected. This is what's coming through right now. Hand selected as a handler. And nothing was accidental. It was all quite intentional. one could dare say, manipulative. Manipulative. This is what's coming through. Now, what's very unusual about Eunice Murray is initially her statement was she found Marilyn. She found Marilyn dead, and she, reached out to get police on the scene, get help, get help. What was unusual, though, about Eunice is that when they did arrive on the scene, when the LAPD arrived on the scene, Eunice was doing the laundry, which is not typical, right? That's not typical. Why would you go about doing the laundry and such when you're making a call about a very famous woman that you have found dead in her home, and you know that there are police coming to assess the scene? Why would you be doing laundry? You wouldn't want to touch anything. You want to leave everything as it is. You definitely don't want to have your hands on what is potential evidence. How does she know? How does she know how she passed? So there's already these questionable pieces about Eunice Murray. Now, this is a good time to bring in the red diary, because it is said that Marilyn had a red diary. And in this red diary, she put all of her innermost thought, her deepest secrets, things that she didn't want anybody else seeing. I'm just going to give it the way it's coming in. Okay. I'm not going to censor what's coming in. I'm just going to read this like I would any other time that I am channeling energy. I'm getting that was compromised. I'm getting that Eunice did know where Marilyn's diary was, that Eunice had looked at the diary and was well aware of its whereabouts. Not that she ever shared that with Marilyn, but Marilyn knew. And Marilyn had her own ways of knowing when somebody had gone through her diary. And it had something to do with a particular page in the diary that she put a little fold in a very intentional way. So she would know if it had been disrupted because somebody had opened it. Okay. So there's this piece here about Eunice that's very suspect. And it's ironic because initially, Eunice's story to the cops that night was that she found her that way and she doesn't know anything else. She didn't see anything unusual. She didn't hear anything unusual. Just all of a sudden she came in to check on her and she was gone. Years later, she totally changed that story. She changed that story and said that Bobby Kennedy had actually come there that night. He came to see Marilyn, and that there was a breakup between them. That Bobby was letting Marilyn know that they could not continue to see each other, that there was too much that had been compromised, that there were people who had their eye on the situation, and that it was like a liability, basically, and that he wouldn't be able to talk to her again, that he wouldn't be able to see her again, that it was an emotional exchange, that feelings got a little heated, a little riled up. And this disclosure was really significant because initially Bobby had an alibi that he was not in the LA area at the time, that he actually was at a ranch just outside of the San Francisco area up north in California. And there's more on that. But we know that there's been certain suppression. Certain people have been kept quiet in the situation. And again, it's because of the other elements that come into play further down the road, that we do know is established fact. Okay, we do know is established fact. There's a reason why it's a matter of national security, and the reason why it's a matter of national security is because um, it is on the record that her Hollywood home was fully tapped. It was fully bugged, and that was confirmed by Peter Otosh. Peter Otosh, who personally had a hand in that and, just laid it all out on the line. Okay, so that's something that's known fact. That automatically makes it a matter of national security. It also lets you know that there were conversations that went down in that home that were being monitored that were of security importance on a national level. All right. So this is leading up to this point. What we want to know about Eunice Murray is what's her role in this situation? And we're going to just go ahead. Ooh, this is interesting. Okay, I didn't intend this. I had half the deck up and half the deck down when I went to shuffle them. So I feel like it's half and half in this matter. Okay, let me turn this around. We'll get these shuffled correctly. Just as I went to do that, this card like flew out of the deck and it's in the shadow. Ace of Swords. Okay, so we know that, it's like take with a grain of salt what Eunice brought forward. Yeah, and I mean, this is what I really got when I tapped into her energy with Marilyn. It's like it felt like that she was a supportive energy, in what went down that night. That she'd already didn't trust Eunice, that she already had feelings of, being on her guard around Eunice. She already had known that Eunice had kind of been rifling through her things, looking at her stuff, invading her privacy. That made her very uncomfortable. And, there's kind of this general feeling of what's coming forward right now is that she was after her own interests, her own protection in the matter. And I mean, understandably so. If you have official people like that involved, I can see why she would be apprehensive about bringing too much forward. And I do feel that, of course, there's like book deals and there's like money opportunities that tainted her reasoning to break her silence and bring forward this other piece. But also at the time that Eunice came forward later and recanted what she had brought in initially as her statement, there was already a lot of new evidence appearing that was really making her look suspect. So it was sort of like, yeah, that's what is really coming through from Marilyn right now. It's like she had to save her ass. That's what it comes down to. We're going to go ahead and read what it says on this card that says Ace of Swords, which is always the true statement. It's just like half and half, Yes, she did have a guilty conscience about it. Yes, she kind of was, sort of in that thing of, money generated. Let's just say that money is what motivated her. It's interesting because Marilyn says in a strange way she can understand that too because she's been in desperate positions in her life before, much like when she took those photos for that famous calendar that sold 8 million copies and made her the most famous pinup of all time. And yet everybody who profited off of that, was in the end, really Hugh Hefner, right? Hugh Hefner, who later buys, a plot next to hers so he can spend all eternity with her because he feels like he was somehow granted that. When really, it's like, it's almost insulting, I have to say. I do have to say that. It's insulting because it's such a symbol of like, this whole energy that was around her throughout her life from the men in her field that she worked. Like they thought that they had some right to her, that they felt entitled, and really they were manipulating her and they were profiting off of her in a way that's actually quite disturbing, quite disturbing. I mean, when all comes out at the end of the day, Marilyn got paid $50 for those famous nude shots. $50. But she did it because she was in a really financially tight spot. She wasn't going to be able to make her rent. And so she did what she had to do. So I'm getting from her that it's that kind of situation with Eunice, desperation will make you do things you wouldn't think you would do. And that's come through with Marilyn very much, that she knew that people were not perfect. And so she had this real huge capacity to forgive because she also has understood how times in her life she had to compromise. She had to compromise. And how we are all challenged at times, to stay true to what we know is in alignment with our ethics. So this says Eight of Swords, seat tree, inflames men with women's love, and women with men's love, causes them to show themselves naked if desired. Wow. Oh my God. Okay. I mean, that just really just like confirmed the truth of everything that was just said. All right. So, very interesting confirmation to come through with that. All right, so we got this picture forming here now. So we know that what Eunice brought in later is in alignment with the truth. What she said initially was not, that she just found her like that. We know that she kind of like got sucked in, and that there was money involved that made her kind of cough up the truth. And that's why she's kind of 50-50. It's not like so noble that she came forward with that. All right. I really want to know about Greenson. I want to know about Greenson and the psychologist and the role that he played in the situation, because I've also had some kind of conflicted feelings about him. I think at times, like, he felt somebody very supportive for Marilyn because he was somebody she could confide in and gave her a feeling of stability and guidance. When is this turned up in the center? Okay, we'll take that one out. Maybe that's in relation to what I'm saying right now. But there was also this piece that at the same time, it was difficult for her to fully trust him too. Okay. I think she became very addicted near the end to having access to those barbiturates. And so because of that, there's like a codependency developed. Like there was a part of her that knew that what was happening in their connection wasn't right and that it wasn't in her best interest. And at the same time, it was sort of like maintaining the connection and having the personal familiarity is what made sure that she could get the drugs. And that's what was kind of keeping her going, was to have this ability to numb out a lot of what she was feeling, because remember, it was a very intense time in her life. Yeah, this card just turned over here. Ooh, we got a couple that turned over. Okay. It's a very intense time in her life. She's splitting up with her third husband, Arthur Miller. She'd been having trouble, on the set. She had this experience, where Peter Lawford, introduced her as the late Marilyn Monroe when she sung for John F. Kennedy for his birthday, and just the way that experience had affected her, how she felt humiliated. She was already feeling a lot of the pain that she had kind of numbed out for a while, which is what made her turn, it's a vicious cycle with addiction, made her turn to using more barbiturates to numb things out. But the reality is that she was hurting, she was hurting. Think about yourself and in your own life. If you were dealing with all of this kind of converging at one time, you were made a public spectacle of, if you had been humiliated, if you had been outed like that, if you had men in your life who were trying to suppress you, trying to suppress your voice, and at the same time, making an example out of you, like putting you in your place because you've gotten a little too big for your britches, how that would affect you, especially how that would affect you when you are somebody who runs Lilith on your ascendant. Okay, we know that she's going to backlash against any form of masculine domination. And there was never an instance of her being dominated. She wants to make this very clear. She was never dominated by men. She was more an active participant in the dynamic because she understood what she could get out of the situation. So there was like this agreement there, an unspoken agreement. But she never in her life let herself be dominated by a man. She didn't. She didn't. She wasn't that type of broad. She just wasn't. She was very strong and very intelligent. And she more, if you really pay attention to her, if you really like, I encourage you the next time that you see one of her films and you watch her acting, she really was sort of shining a light through reflecting the projections of these men back onto them through the way she would act out these roles that they had cast her in as this dumb blonde, insulting her intelligence, trying to make her to be weaker than she actually was. And she overplayed it almost to like sort of put it in their face, like thumb, her nose at them and their opinions, because it's like, who's really the stupid one? Who really is? You want me to play this role? Okay, I'll play this role. And even when they would direct her, in her roles, no matter what situation she was dealing with, they always wanted her to be more sexual, more overtly sexual. So it's like she made a parody of it. She made a mockery of it through her acting. She was not somebody to be submissive. So all these points converging, and you have a trauma history, and all you've ever wanted was to have this connection with a strong masculine figure because you never knew your father. And your mother was absent because she couldn't show up, because she struggled with mental illness, and your grandmother as well. And both had been committed. I mean, she really dealt with a lot. And she just wanted that feeling of being able to trust a man and know that she was held. And she had somebody who could hold it down for her instead of her always having to be so strong and hold it down herself. And she was fiercely strong for everything that she had been through, and to also be able to do it all with hopefulness, with kindness, with a smile on her face. And she was really big on looking for the light in life, looking for the light in life. But, there was a very complicated relationship. This is what I'm getting from her with Greenson, because she, on one hand, felt connected to him and looked to him for guidance and somebody to also just unload to at that time, just talk about what she was going through. But at the same time, she also knew that he didn't necessarily have her best interests at heart. So we got, yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag with him. We have some shadow and light coming in with him. So let's look at the shadow aspect first. The Lovers, Zipar, causes women to love men and brings them together in love, can make women barren. Hmm. Hmm. Marilyn always wanted to have children and she didn't have children. And so I think there was like this connection with spending time with him and his family. It sort of made her feel part of a family. And the thing that's kind of shadow aspect about that is that he knew this about her, obviously. He knew this about her. He knew how much she longed for a sense of family. He knew how much she longed for a strong sense of some kind of masculine, father figure in her life. He knew how much she wanted to have children and all of these things. And so to include her in his personal life so much by integrating her in his family the way he did, inappropriately from a professional standpoint, was manipulative. It was a bit manipulative. And then on the other side of that, we have coming up in the light, King of Pentacles, Lahaya. And this says, obedience causes harmony and peace, calms anger in anyone, okay? So we see that, he gave her some kind of stability. He gave her a feeling of stability. He gave her a feeling of grounding, gave her a sense of peace. He was really good at soothing her when she was upset, when she was angry. And I believe that's because he held that stabilizing energy for her. We have Nine of Pentacles here, Eua, the omniscient God. And this says, submission to higher order identifies traitors and destroys their plans. Okay. So there's also this sense here that he tried to warn Marilyn. That's what I'm getting. He did try to warn her. Maybe he also had, Eunice was a bit nosy because, she was brought to Marilyn through him. He set her up with Eunice as her housekeeper. And so maybe that's why she was always so up in her business, was he could see the fragility in Marilyn and the need that she have some protection around her, that she be aware of what was happening around her. But there's this like incongruency there, right? There's these shadow aspects there where it's inappropriate. There's like too much crossing of the line there. I feel like with him, it's sort of a gray area. I think he had an attraction to her. I think he had an inappropriate attraction to her. And I think there may have been, some temptation there, temptation for him to cross the line. It does feel like he was a little too up in her business, though, in a way that doesn't feel quite appropriate with Eunice, being charged to Marilyn by him. So when does your psychologist start to make these kind of decisions for you, like who's going to be your housekeeper? That's very strange, very strange. But I think this is like a situation where things became quite muddled, because of all of the drug use and everything else that was going on. So again, I keep going back and it keeps coming in. It's a very similar situation to what Michael Jackson was dealing with in his situation, having these handlers who were actually making him very dependent, and through that making him very disempowered. Yeah, I think that's true. Gave throat chakra stuff coming up around that. Now, in terms of Eunice changing her story, is that correct? Is that correct? Did that indeed happen? Did Bobby actually show up that night? I mean, he's always stuck to his alibi, and that was corroborated for him by other friends, okay, that he was at a ranch just outside of San Francisco in the North Bay area. But there were 18 witnesses who say they saw him in LA during that time when Marilyn passed. And there was actually a very well-respected officer, Lynn Franklin, who knows for a fact that he was there at that time, because he actually pulled over Peter Lawford going 70 miles an hour. He was speeding, pulled over Peter Lawford. Bobby Kennedy was in the back seat, and there was another gentleman in the car with them. When Lynn asked Peter why he was speeding, he said that he was trying to get Bobby to the Hilton to pick up his luggage because he needed to go out of town. And to that, Lynn Franklin, the officer, said, Well, you're 2 miles past the off ramp to get to the Hilton. And when he said that, and I wrote this down, 'cause I want to get the exact quotes right. Okay. When he said that, Bobby Kennedy immediately said in the back, "You stupid ass." Okay. I mean, you make up your own mind. You make up your own mind about that. I'm just presenting what has come forward. And like I said, do some research. You'll find a lot of this information is out there. You can check up on it. You can read up on it. Um, why don't we do a little investigating into that? Let's look at that. Is that true? Is that true? Was Bobby there that night? Let's ask the big question. Was Bobby there that night? It's also rumored that they were looking for her red diary. Because remember, Marilyn had gotten really mouthy near the end there. And she had said she was going to start going public with some information that she had. She was going to basically humiliate them the way that they had humiliated her with the whole debacle when she went to sing happy birthday at John F. Kennedy's birthday. Okay? You see what's happening? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and certainly not one who has Lilith on the ascendant, riding on the ascendant. I'm telling you. And Ted just said yes to that. So, big affirmation on that. I'm obliged to believe that he was there that night, just from what I've come across in my own research. I'm feeling that he was there that night. It's not what's on official record, okay? But like I said, do some research, and I'll bring in a little tidbit that'll really, it kind of gives a sort of a stamp on leaning more that way. Let's just say that, okay? But let's check into this. What about Bobby? Okay, anything else? What about Bobby? Was he there that night? Was Bobby there that night at Marilyn's place the night she died? Was he there? Were they looking for that red diary? Got 2 cards, 2 in the light, 1 in the shadow. Let's look at the shadow first. We have 2 of cups in the shadow. Okay. Well, I mean, that right there says to me that there was a breakup, that's what he was apparently there to do. He was there to call things off with her. He was there to end the relationship. He was saying, we're not going to talk to each other anymore. Like, this is done. We're deading this right now. And this is 2 of cups, solos, causes the love of women to men and of men to women. This gives the impression that maybe he didn't really want to call it off, but he knew that he had to. There really wasn't a choice in the matter. But there's also this piece here too that, this wasn't any way a loving connection. There was so much manipulation and so many strings being pulled in this connection, and yet there was this tie there. I don't think he necessarily wanted to let go of the connection, but he knew that at that point it was a liability and that things were getting dark in the situation. And after that, we have Queen of Swords, Elamaya, divine power, guards against mental troubles. Okay, this is coming up in the light. And with that, we have 6 of Swords, Annual, the gentle God, perception of unity, protects against accidents, heals the sick. Okay. Also coming up in the light. So we can see that the intention was, we got to end this, because if we don't end this, something really bad is going to go down. It was well known that she was definitely being scrutinized by both the FBI and the CIA. They had a very comprehensive files going on her for many reasons. You have to remember that, her 3rd husband, Arthur Miller, he was he already had a spotlight on him. He was very openly communistic. He was highly political in his work as a playwright. So, there was already attention on her. But then with her involvement with the Kennedys, on top of that, which though never officially confirmed, it was pretty common knowledge. It was pretty common knowledge. It was at a time when you just don't speak of these things. It was a different time than the time we live in now, where everybody splashes everything all over social media. There was more of a decorum. There was more a certain way of handling situations, and in particular, messy situations, right? So, I think he knew how vulnerable Marilyn was, actually. I think he knew that Marilyn was in over her head. I think he knew that she was, signing checks with her mouth that she really didn't want to cash because it could be her undoing. I think there was the sense that things were, getting really heated and this needed to come to an end. But just for this to come in about coming in the shadow with the Two of Cups, and that's what later came out from Eunice, that he was there to end the relationship with her, I would say absolutely. And I want to know, did they look for the red diary after that? Was that part of why he was there? Was he looking for the red diary? I'm just doing a cut of the deck on that. We got the shadow coming up for this, and it says judgment. Oh man. Ooh, I got Sammy's Belial. Distributes promotions and high offices, causes one to be liked. So maybe that's also what he was set there to do. He needed to get his hands on that. It's sort of like that was his directive for going there that night and ending things with her. Was also, kind of like shut your mouth. Don't talk about this stuff anymore, or you're not going to like the way things go. It just goes deeper and deeper and deeper, though, with this whole scenario, because we touched on it in the first video. We touched on how Noguchi, the coroner, who wanted to do deeper research into Marilyn's death because of this probable suicide, just wasn't adding up, and that they had collected specimens that they were going to run some tests on. They were going to do more research, more investigation into the cause of her death. And these were destroyed. These specimens were destroyed, so they could never follow through with it. And there's been extensive suppression of evidence in this situation with her passing. And it's a really deep rabbit hole. Okay. It is a really deep rabbit hole, and it absolutely has mob ties. And I would say, if you want to know more about that situation, you want to know more about the particulars of that. Sam Giancana, who was big mob boss at that time, his family, his nephew and his brother, put out a book called Double Crossed. And in that book, they claim that he is the one who orchestrated Marilyn's death, and that it was because he wanted to basically frame, he wanted to frame the Kennedys, wanted to get back at the Kennedys. He wanted to get back at Bobby. Absolutely. There was, bad blood between them for sure. And it's ironic, because there always were ties. There always were ties to the mob with the Kennedys. I mean, they helped him get, Illinois. They helped him get Illinois in the election. So, there was this complicated history between the mob and the Kennedys. But there was also this other piece of, in relation to Hoffa and everything that was going on at those times. They were also wanting, Bobby to back off. It's like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. So there was sort of this desire for Sam Giancana to sort of like, put them in their place. This is like a situation where very much, unfortunately, Marilyn was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, knowing too much, knowing too damn much, and also being too mouthy, you know, and standing up for herself in a way that really compromised her safety, made her a liability. Um, and that's a very difficult thing. But, you know, there's pretty much agreement with all the professionals that have been involved, that were involved in the actual scene of the crime, that were involved in the autopsy process and trying to determine cause of death, that things weren't right in this case. And even the deputy assistant to the coroner, Lionel Grandison, refused to sign off on the investigative papers for the coroner's report, because he was like, no, they're probable suicide and we have no way to like look into this further. And in fact, made a very hard line. It's like, I'm not going to sign off on anything until it's researched further. And Noguchi very much felt the same way about that. The coroner, Noguchi, felt very much the same way. And he, in fact, said of Marilyn's case that it was like a puzzle with 100 pieces with about a dozen pieces missing. So there's certain incongruencies that just cannot be reworked, cannot be accounted for. It leaves too many holes in the story. Okay. But I would say if you want to get more details, if that's something you want to explore, and I'm not going to go into that in this episode. In fact, this is the last video where I'm talking about sort of the more grim details of her life, because I don't want to highlight that. I want to bring in what she wants as her legacy and what she wants left behind. And at the same time, you can't avoid looking at her death, because her death is every bit as much of a moment that is just burned in the collective consciousness as her life was. So really wanting to address this and things coming forward in a very clear way, with you all having the information about the circumstances surrounding her passing, so you can come to your own conclusions, so you can make up your own mind. In my mind, it's absolutely not a suicide. It is a crime. And I am very much leaning to what is covered in Double Crossed. Okay. And check it out, check out that book. And that can give you some more illumination in this regard. But there actually has been an official statement from Sergeant Jack Clemens. He did a press release where he ruled it as, because they did try to research it further. They did try to reopen the case and they got shut down. Jury got shut down. Everything got shut down. Everything got locked down because it's a matter of national security. And that has everything to do with the wiretapping. There's a reason why they haven't been able to pursue it further. And he did a press release where he said it was a case of LA County Police Department and the powers that be being involved in a cover-up and obstructing justice. So that's pretty bold, and a lot of the people who've come out to speak against the ruling of probable suicide have been very, very clear and very strong in their positions. I think there's enough evidence forward to support that. But let's ask the big question. Was it suicide or was it foul play? Was it suicide or was it foul play? Okay, that didn't take long. Double shadow to one light. Ooh, oh my gosh. Okay. So we have Seven of Wands, Glacia, Labolas. Causes murder and bloodshed, tells of things to come, causes the love of friends or enemies, can make one invisible. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You do not get more literal than that. Are you kidding me? Right after that, Ace of Wands, Azazel. Teaches holy secrets, instructs how to make weapons in the art of seduction. And the light card that's here, this is big for me because I called him in before. I've been doing these sessions and I work with him regularly. We got the Chariot, Michael, and Michael is all about protection and preserving the truth and shielding and covering with spirit. So I take this as a confirmation. In terms of spiritual court, this was foul play. And that is the truth as far as spirit is concerned. And it says perseverance, success, and conflict, overcoming adversity. The truth will always prevail, right? The truth will always prevail. Wow, that's really potent. It's really potent. Spirit coming through to back it up very strongly. And I just want to finish by pulling one of these cards here from Marilyn's quotes to see what she wants to contribute in her own words to this particular topic as we wrap up this episode. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to take away from this, Marilyn, in terms of what happened that night? What do you want passed on? Okay. See what Marilyn wants to say. Two things, okay. She says, just because you fall once doesn't mean you'll fall at everything. Keep trying, hold on, and always trust yourself, because if you don't, then who will? And that's wild, because I did say, here's what happened, here's what's been presented. You make up your own mind. So I think she's saying, trust what you're feeling about this. And she says, you never know what life is like until you have lived it. I also think this is just sort of a message coming through for her about how important it is to value life, because her light was snuffed out way too soon, way too soon. She was only 36 years old. She was at the prime of her life, and there was so much more she wanted to experience and she didn't get a chance to. And so that's this message that she wants passed on to you is don't waste time. Don't waste time thinking about what you'll do someday. Make it your now. Make it your present moment. Take steps to make your dreams a reality and live bold and live bright and let yourself sparkle, because that's what she was all about, is just really allowing yourself to enjoy the sweet taste of life and the lightness in life and the blessings of life, and stay focused on that, just like that star card in the tarot. And it will guide you through all the tough storms that will inevitably come your way, because it's part of life. Sometimes we fall, but we also learn when we fall how we rise. And I'll be back with you tomorrow for episode 3.